Well, welcome everybody to our next podcast. We're on a lovely sunny day in Suffolk. We've got the door open, so hopefully you can hear the birds and the cows in the background. We've asked my friend Metin down today, talk a little bit about recovery. We thought we'd try and, invite someone down who's been a father through their addiction and a father in recovery. So we're going to talk about recovery, but also try and find out what it's like to be a father in addiction, somebody that's sort of been through that addiction with their children and into recovery with their children, and some of the challenges. I've not really heard much about that sort of stuff, but I think we start, Metin, if you can tell us a little bit about maybe your background, your own sort of childhood, and sort of what led you to recovery, a bit about using and that, and what that looked like.
I didn't have too bad a childhood, really. Like my dad's from Northern Cyprus, so it was a little bit different in that he was quite strict and a bit heavy-handed and whatnot.
You didn't grow up in Cyprus, did you?
No, but we went there quite a lot of trips out there. I grew up in Southend. I'm just doing the main normal sort of kid stuff, really. I think I always noticed, always had that. I felt like I was being hard done by. Like,
well, was you being hard done by?
No, I wasn't being hard, but I always felt like that, and I see that in my kids today, actually.
When you say hard done by, what do you think what was different?
Like just not being treated the same as other people and that sort of stuff.
What was you seeing that they were getting that you weren't getting then?
Like trainers, clothes, and the reality was I always got that stuff as well, and quite nice stuff. My parents always went out of their way to provide that, but I'd always see other people with stuff and always be comparing myself a lot. And I suppose because of having a different cultural background.
Do you think it was a cultural thing?
I think that probably had a little bit to do with it as well. But yeah, I had quite a good, like early years, it was quite good. I think as I got up to sort of getting to the puberty stage, 11s, 12s, 13s, and my parents split up, and then all of a sudden I had a load of free time and sort of free reign.
So I mean, if they split up, then it must have been lots of arguing, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, a bit of arguing, a bit of violence, that sort of stuff. But I think I think that definitely had some sort of effect. But I also know that as soon as I was aware that I could manipulate that had an effect, I latched onto that quite a bit.
Yeah.
Poor me.
But I guess when you got them hard feelings, I think that's the thing, is that if a child's brought up in that sort of environment, there's a feeling that your parents are splitting up, it can cause a lot of instability, which causes a lot of uncomfortable emotions, or, adverse childhood experiences, they'd kind of call it.
Yeah.
And so it can make you then sort of be a little bit that way, but I don't think that sort of takes anything away from how traumatic that is. I mean, most people's bad behaviour is a response to their environment.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think, like, when I look back on it, my brother and sister are quite functional people compared to how I was. I definitely
responding differently to you.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, sorry, I knocked that. Right. Definitely responded differently to me. And I think even from that age of like 11, 12, always seeking out the kids who were up to like a bit of mischief. And
so you were sensitive, though, I guess, were you? Often people that are sensitive, the world affects them probably a little bit more negatively. Yeah,
and I think I definitely seek that out as well, and just try to be one of the lads and get involved in all that. And anything like adrenaline-y, I would always, that I was going to get that bit of adrenaline, I'd always be drawn to that.
Yeah, it's always interesting that when you talk to a lot of people, how they sort of cite an adverse sort of childhood experience, but then it usually follows that then they were more attracted to like the kids that were smoking and the slowly sort of heading outside into the margins of society. whatever that triggers in us, it doesn't usually trigger us to be well behaved
Yeah.
or, try harder at school. Often it seems to drive us to start, for some reason, start feeling more comfortable in a sort of more marginalised behaviour. That's common though. That's a funny thing. That.
Yeah. And I suppose that was the sort of point I started experimenting with substances.
How old was that?
That was about 12. Like just with cigarettes first,
Yeah.
and then on to weed, some ecstasy, acid, all of the usual stuff. And that
During the rave period, was that?
yeah, doing a bit. But I think even then, it was more sort of house parties at that time, because I was only sort of 13, 14 when I was experimenting with a lot of that stuff, and really liked that attention it would give me at the time of doing it as well, and the feeling it would give me that I fitted in a bit more.
And so your mum and dad split up at that time. So again, I guess you couldn't really say that was any real reason why you were doing that, because I guess I always say, look, everybody did it.
Yeah.
It wasn't because my mum and dad split
No,
up.
no.
It was like, didn't go, oh, my mum and dad split up, I feel less than, I need to go and smoke some weed. It was like, it was just kind of everybody was doing it.
Yeah, and all my mates were doing it, and I think before, when my dad was there, it was very regimented and sort of quite a lot of discipline in the house.
So your mum left.
No, my dad left.
So you.
So I was left with my mum, and I think she was having a lot of problems at the time, and
Did you get a lot more freedom then when your dad left?
yes, and no one to really discipline me.
Yeah.
So when I see all my mates look like they're having fun, out smoking weed, joyriding, all of that stuff, I thought it was brilliant. At
So
the
it
time.
must have been a fantastic
Yeah,
experience.
Yeah, it was really good fun.
On one hand, I suppose.
Yeah, and like the house parties, suddenly got a bit of confidence to talk to girls and all of that stuff. But I think by the time I'd sort of about 15, and I was with a few mates, and might have been 15, 16, and started trying the harder stuff, and that's when the trouble sort of started.
So you're still at school?
Yeah.
Doing all right at school, or that gone down?
I was always quite smart at school. I was in sort of like the higher sets, but I never applied myself.
Yeah.
Weren't really interested in school too much. I'd always do all right in the exams, but just wanted to mess about in lessons. When I'd go to school, that was. And I think I sort of, by about 16, and leaving school and then going on to college, I went and done a business studies course at college, and I think when I look at it now, and I was sort of doing this business studies course and learning about customer service and all of this stuff, but I was selling a load of solid at the time, so I sort of incorporated that into it. And then I'm at college, and all of a sudden I've got this quite thriving little solid business that I was selling a lot of that.
What area was this?
This was in Southend.
Yeah.
And I don't think I was doing that for too long now. I think I got nicked doing that.
Yeah.
And then that would help fund the harder drugs that I'd started experimenting with.
Which was?
A lot of heroin and crack
15?
cocaine at 15, yeah. I think about 16.
Did you have trouble getting hold of it, or did you already know everyone by then?
It was a little bit difficult to get hold of back then.
Just because of your age, or just because
Yeah.
it was hard to get hold of?
I think a lot of the guys doing it were quite a bit older.
They wouldn't sell to you, or was everyone sell to you?
There was only a couple who would sell to us.
So was there drug dealers with morals?
Yeah, one or two of them. I don't know if it was morals or they're probably more worried about...
Getting nicked,
Yeah,
beaten up.
yeah, all of that stuff. But yeah, I mean, started experimenting with that, and quite quickly that got a hold of me. And I remember being very naive about what it was going to do to me and how it was going to affect me.
I mean, just trying to sort of help people understand is what would possess a 15-year-old to start cracking heroin? Now, how did you even know it existed?
The only reason I knew it existed because the guys I was sort of hanging around with, and
Were they older than you?
yes, they were quite a bit older and quite cool.
So there is
nice
a danger
guys.
in that, and I think there's a warning to the wise. I think that's what happened to me. That if your kids are hanging around with older people, they're going to probably do things more advanced than they would at that age, aren't they?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think I missed out on a lot of things by going to do that and trying to be too grown up too quick.
Yeah, but again, it's like who you're hanging around with, isn't it?
Yeah, but I was definitely influenced by that and wanted to be a part of that
Yeah.
and thought it was cool.
Because addiction's like, I say to people, it's like, it's sort of contagious. You know, if there was no heroin around you, you probably wouldn't have, that's the trouble with the way our society is, I think. They let it spread so easy.
Yeah,
And the more it spreads, the easier it is to get introduced to it. And I think they found that in America, even through the opiate crisis, that the addiction spread through the overprescription of opioid painkillers. But if you don't get in, so that kind of tells me that a lot of them people were probably potentially heroin addicts, but because they never had it, I look at it like a peanut allergy. If you've got a peanut allergy, you don't know you got it till you have the peanut.
yeah,
And so if you give heroin to a lot more people, you'd find you'd have a lot more addicts. But not everybody that takes heroin is going to end up an addict, as you probably noticed. Some of your mates give it up and moved on. And,
yeah, definitely.
but some people just seem to be addicted to it pretty quickly, because I think there's, like you even said about your is it brother or sister,
Yeah,
how that their responses to your family were very different from yours. But I should think even if you give your brother and sister drugs, the chances of them becoming just like you were would be pretty remote as well.
yeah, yeah. I'd agree
There's
with
something
that.
different about you.
Yeah, definitely.
But it doesn't take away the point that if you never got introduced to it, that probably wouldn't have been. So I think these are the countries, sorry mate, I'm going on a bit, but I find this interesting, the countries where they kind of execute drug dealers.
Yeah.
But I think it's based on that theory, is they don't understand why it's like a disease, drug addiction.
Yeah,
And if you let it spread, it will spread, it will get introduced to children. But in them countries, they believe that if they just kill the dealers, it keeps the infection down.
yeah,
Because each dealer will spread that disease to a lot of other children and other people. So by killing that one dealer, they may be saving 10, 20, 50, 100 lives.
yeah,
Sort of some sense to that, isn't it?
yeah. Definitely. Yeah, and it's I think it's sort of like I said, it got a grip of me very early, and I think by about 17 or 18, when my parents found out, it was quite funny because I've had quite a lot of headaches with my boy, one of my boys at the minute. I've been chasing him around, and I was talking to my dad about it, and he was saying, I had similar problems with you. I think he had kebab shops, so I went to see him.
He weren't doing no drugs or anything.
No,
like that.
he was dead against drugs.
Just a sort of grafter.
Yeah,
How was you funding your habit then? Was it all, you said dealing, but was that all the way up until 18 or?
yeah, a bit of dealing, a bit of thieving, a lot of manipulating of my parents. Like I said, that oh poor me, I'm like this because my parents split up.
Yeah, guilty
all of
parents
that.
are easy manipulated, aren't they?
Yeah, I was really, really good at manipulating them to think that and give me money out of guilt.
Again, got to put this out there, because again, what we find out in addiction treatment is if parents are guilty, if people are guilty, they're easy manipulated.
Yes.
And then they try and give you stuff or reduce the discipline. They try and be a friend. They let you do things that they shouldn't be letting you do because they're trying to make it up to you because of their guilt. Guilty parents can be a bit of a problem, I think.
Yeah, and I can relate to that. I remember being in treatment and having the kids come down to visit me for a weekend, and just like trying to spoil them, and just trying to give them what they want and buy them loads of clothes.
Yeah.
I think at the time I was quite. I don't think I was that clean. I know I was still a bit jittery. I
Yeah,
remember
you don't
walking
want to
around the shops
discipline
with
them. Not that they're going to accept it after all that anyway. But
Yeah. I remember saying to them, right, you've got 5 minutes each, just go and choose whatever you want, but I can't stay in this shop more than 5 minutes. Just get what you want and we'll get out of here. And weren't really too worried about what it was going to cost at the time. Yeah, but I mean, I think by about 18, I'd done my first treatment centre at 18. I think when my parents found out.
And what trouble were you in at 18 that led you to that, or was it just your parents finding out? Or I mean, that would be quite shocking at that age, isn't it?
Yeah, I had quite a physical addiction by that. I was physically addicted. I think I was in my second year at I'd gone to college, didn't do a lot of college, but passed it quite easily, and then went back to do the advanced course. And I think I'd got a grant from the government, which went in about 2 days, a few £100 grant, what was meant to last you the whole term. And then it got quite obvious that I had a problem because I was just begging for money all the time off my family, getting up to stuff. I'm sure I was in some sort of trouble with the police, but I can't remember exactly what. Probably a few driving offences and whatnot. I've had quite a few of them over the years. And I think I was, at the time, it was quite, they had a drug the drug services was up in Rochford Hospital. And I think when I went in there, I think me and one of my mates went in there to get on a methadone script and saying, I don't want to be on this, but I need something, I don't know what to do. And they're like, right, I remember being told about meetings, there's an NA meeting here.
Was that through local services? That was doctors?
I'd been to the doctor, and the doctor had referred me there, and this was the local drug services, but this was I don't know, 98, 99.
Yeah.
It was quite a rough and ready place. It weren't I've been to a few of the services lately to do a bit of service and whatnot, and they're a lot different to how they was back then, even just the buildings and whatnot, and I suppose the money invested in them, etc. And I think at the time me and my mate were the youngest in the area to get on that methadone prescription at that time. That was sort of the only option they could give you. And like I said, when my dad found out about this, my mum knew about it, but then when my dad found out, he was like, right, literally the next day, I think he drove us up to London, got us one of them temporary passports, and I was suddenly on a plane with him to Cyprus, and he was detoxing out there. Yeah, it was a bit of a horrendous thing. Actually.
Was it like a detox centre, or he was just?
No, he's just you coming with me.
He's just clucking you off.
You're going to rattle it out.
Yeah.
But even that, it weren't a proper. I remember being out there and not really knowing anything about it. Same as when I started doing everything, I never really realised what sort of a grip it would get on me.
Was you shooting or smoking it? And
At first, the first couple of years, I was just smoking it, and then later on, I was shooting it up everywhere really.
And the crack and all was.
Yes. Yeah, I had quite a few abscesses on my arms that had to be cut out and all of that stuff. Most of the scars are covered up with tattoos now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I remember being out there and just drinking a lot, detoxing off heroin, but just replacing it with a lot of alcohol.
That was acceptable though, was it?
Yeah, and I didn't know about an abstinence-based program at that time. It was just I take that. I think the doctor might have given me a load of sleeping pills and some other pills for stomach cramps. So I was just eating loads of whatever I could get my hands on. And then I come back to Southend. It was 2 weeks out there with my dad, and that was probably the most time I'd spent with him in 4 or 5 years. That 2 weeks, and then come back to Southend, and they'd arranged for me to go to a treatment centre in where was it? It was down in Clevedon near Somerset. It was a Christian-based centre.
I think I know the one.
I can't remember. It might have been Caleb House.
Caleb, I think it was. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was down.
Yeah.
My mum took me down there, but literally within an hour of land getting home, I'd gone out and scored. I had no real knowledge around it or anything like that. That as soon as I had one, that was going to be. I just want more and more and more. I thought I'm over with the physical bit now. I can just use leisurely. I'll just have a little bit here, a little bit there, and I won't, and that'll be it, and then I won't do it for another week. That was how my thought process was going. So I think I had 3 days in Southend before I went down to Caleb House, and then went down there. But that was there was quite a lot of freedom down there, and we'd still be like, I was really attracted to the like sneaking round the back and having a cheeky cigarette, and then trying to get a can of beer and having a sneaky beer with the lads who, I think I was the youngest one in there at the time. But I think I lasted nearly 8 weeks down there. And from like 16 to 34, them 8 weeks was the longest time that I had without heroin and crack. I was drinking a little bit while I was down there and getting away with it because we just couldn't get hold of enough of it. And we had I had quite a nice time around there with the lads, felt a part of it, and was done some nice day trips and whatnot. I think I got kicked out of there.
Yes, I don't think it was like a rehab like now. I think it was just a man and a woman sort of lived in the house, sort of like a family thing, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I think if I remember rightly.
I think there was about 6 to 8 of us, and they had a couple of houses, and like you do a bit of chores in the day, a bit of cleaning, then a bit of cooking, and you'd go out and have a wander and do some nice things. It was quite enjoyable to be honest.
No, I remember it weren't like a programme or in therapy and all that sort of stuff. Probably church and that, I guess.
Yeah, a bit of church, a bit of Bible reading in the morning. I quite enjoyed it while I was there.
It's just nice, yeah.
But I don't think that was enough to get that meant psychic change that it talks about in the big book. And I got kicked out of there anyway. I went back to Southend. I was always quite savvy in how to make a pound note. So I forged a couple of CVs. I think I got a job in banking on the fraud department. It lasted about 6-7 months with that. I think by the end of that, I was literally, I'd do a couple of hours and I'd do like...
Probably the most honest one there.
Yeah. I'd do a couple of hours of really hard work, and then by like lunchtime I'd go out to score and I'd be back on my head, I'd be asleep with my head on the keyboard. And it was sort of like, generally, I'd try and do well, try and live as everyone else was living. Never pay any bills, always like, I think after that job, I might have gone to another treatment centre. I think my mum tried to get me into one in Slough maybe, but I don't think I stayed there more than a day and walked out. And then a couple of years later, I've gone up to another one in Birmingham. All of them were like Christian-based ones, free, so you didn't have to pay for them. And I think I lasted 3 days at that one in Birmingham, and it's just like...
Was that Bethel?
It might be.
They're pretty hardcore, aren't they?
Yeah. I just remember just rattling really, really bad. Yeah. Just like, I need something.
No TV, no nothing but the Bible to read in it, and it's all strict.
And I think they had quite a few furniture shops and
and do furniture and repair it and all that and sell it. And gardening.
Yeah, but it was quite cold up there, and I was really ill, and weren't really ready at that point. And then come back I think I walked out of there, and then it was right, I'm leaving, I'm walking out, I've had enough, I can't deal with this. Drop me at the train station, get to the train station, and it's like, Mum, can you buy me a ticket home? I'm not going back in there. Probably saying I'm going to do God knows what unless you buy me a ticket. And then got a train back to Southend. And then it was like that old thought pattern as I'm just going to have a little bit to take the edge off. And then it's another 2 or 3 years before I get to dry out again, get clean and detox. And I think in the process of that, I started like a little bit after that. I must have been 23 by this time, and so it got to a point where the only way I could make any money was to start selling stuff, and I was selling quite a bit of crack at the time. I was doing quite well at it, but never had no money. I just had a really big habit, just to fund my own habit, really. and I met my kid's mum at that point. She was in active addiction, and we were sort of just up to no good, all sort of the petty criminal stuff. And we had the kids in addiction. I think when she got pregnant, I had that, right, I'm going to clean up now. I'm not going to use.
You're trying to sort of build a family and sort yourself out. And
yeah, I'm thinking that I'd be able to do that. I really believed that I'd be able to stop.
And the same for her as well.
Yeah,
thinking.
we're going to stop. We're going to get on our scripts, going to reduce down. I think I was on some DTTO orders at the time as well. And I think it was, my daughter was born, and then she must have been, I think I lasted about 8 months of not using crack and heroin.
But on a script.
On a script.
Drinking.
Sniffing a bit here and
Smoking marijuana.
Smoking a
taking
bit of weed.
tablets.
Taking quite a few diazepam.
But apart from that, you're clean.
Yeah. And I remember going into the probation service, and I think they let me off the order early because I hadn't used crack and heroin.
Because you're doing so well.
Yeah.
How much methadone do you think you were taking?
Probably between 80 and 100 mil. Yeah. But at that time, I really believed it. I think I even got a little key ring from them saying, well done, and that sort of thing as well. And then the day come, and I'd seen, I think she had a bit of tinfoil in her bag, and I'd gone down it, found it, and I was like, well, if you're doing it, I'm going to do it. And then we sort of made a pact of, yeah, we'll just do it once a month. And then literally like, I don't know.
I mean, it is astounding, isn't it, that idea of like controlled drug use, even if it is like, you know, methadone, alcohol, pills, marijuana, but you still feel like you're in control somehow, don't you?
Yeah.
And then you still think that you can stop when you want or reduce it.
Yeah.
Or do it once a month or at weekends. It's astounding, that illusion.
Yeah, and that delusional thinking, that went on for like years.
But you don't really know, do you? Because you honestly do believe.
Yeah, I really believed it.
That you can stop whenever you want, or even all the evidence is contrary to that after a few years of trying.
Yeah, and I think even like through probation and that, they sent me on a plastering course.
Well, they're trying to help make that work and all, wouldn't they? That?
Yeah, and that's helped me because that's what I do now.
But it's almost like they're in part of the delusion to a degree, because they're trying to help make that work as well, isn't it?
Yeah, if you can just stay on these prescription substances, but manage to
drink and smoke and take medication.
Yeah, but and still function in work and whatnot.
Yeah, get your sign on for your dole money and get your flat.
Yeah.
For free, then it'll look like you're doing good.
Yeah.
Which you might well be.
But I remember going through that and, like you say, not having someone to say to me, this ain't going to work. And like when you come into 12-step recovery.
I guess for some people, because I guess even like, you know, that sort of harm minimalisation, even if it's done very badly, which I think it is a lot of the time, because I think it's a lot more than just taking methadone. There's a lot more support. I guess for some people that definitely does improve their chaotic life.
Yeah.
Some people, I guess you must have seen them as well, that it kind of was working to a degree.
Yeah, and I think
for them,
at times for me, it did work, but never for maybe 3 weeks or a month.
Yeah, it's like that. It's like, did it work, or did it just take you? Is it just part of the cycle? You always end up back, kind of where you started, or a little bit worse sometimes.
That getting to that point where I had the like I suppose that gift of desperation to change and like, listen, I just can't do this. And I'll do anything. Just tell me what to do. By doing a lot of the prescription stuff, it made that last a lot longer.
Yeah, well, I think that's kind of like, you think it does it. I think we put something out last week or the week before. I think it was Izzy's talk, and because I think she must have said something about her mum enabling her. Somebody got quite angry, like, enablers keep people alive. On one hand, they kind of do, but they also just drag out a lot of people's death.
Yeah.
A lot of people die, and again, I think we're going to have to do a podcast soon because I think I just found out we're in our 10th year of the rising drug deaths. It's risen every year for the last 10 years, and so that's kind of it's interesting. But it is very difficult to come down on any side of the argument around that stuff because on one hand, enablers help keep people alive, but a lot of people die that are being enabled, and they never get better. And in the long run, you just getting sort of drug addicts that are dying older.
Yeah.
And look, some people it works fantastic, and that's great. But for a lot, it doesn't. And when you've got rising death rates, and they said most of them aren't in treatment, but I don't think that's true. In the AA book, it brings to my memory that it talks about that there was a guy who gave up drinking for 30 years. I don't know if you remember that story. It's in the beginning of the book. It says that he decided that he wasn't going to drink again till he'd retired. So he decided that he wasn't going to drink till he retired. So he didn't drink for something like 30 years. Now, I'm sure that weren't a great 30 years for him, but again, his whole mind was just about retiring. And it says as soon as he retired, he pulled out his slippers and pipe and bottle, and he was dead within 5 years. But this is the thing, it says, but he was back where he started. But I learned, well, he weren't back where he started, he was dead.
Yeah.
That weren't where he started, but it was that addiction get you. You end up back where you started, and I think that's what shows a lot of the time. If you keep ending up back where you started, or it's worse, whatever you're doing ain't working.
Yeah.
Because you get that in rehab. People go, I did stay clean for like 6 months. I can do it, and it's like, well, it's not the stopping. Because we can get everyone off drugs in England in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
We could get 100% of everyone off drugs in 2 weeks in the country. It's not hard to get people off drugs. It's how do they stay stopped. And that's the hard bit. Even with them controlled harm minimalisation programs, of course they work for some people, but for some people they don't.
Yeah.
And some of them end up dead, quite a lot of them actually, that never get free from that cycle. And so, if you take medication and it brings your life up to a reasonable level, that you're okay to live at that level, then that's wonderful. We're very happy. But a lot of people like yourself, they can get to that place, but then it only lasts for a short period of time.
Yeah.
But again, rehab's like that as well. Abstinence is like that. You get people come into rehab, they get 28 days, 3 months, they've eaten some food, they've stopped poisoning themselves, they look fantastic, and everyone's like, oh, look how wonderful they look. And it's like, that's not a good, honest picture. It looks good for now, because everybody, when you do the family groups, even this week I did a family group, and the families and spouses and mothers and fathers, man, they hang on hope. Like really, it's almost like it gives them some relief to believe this is going to finally be it. and even though we're laughing, it's truly sad.
Yeah.
Because every time they want to believe the lies, they want to believe the promises. They know in their gut it ain't true, but they have nothing else to do except wish and hope that this is it. It's over now. And I think often, and it's sad, and then it all comes crashing down again, or they're living in fear of it all crashing down. And again, if you've not been on that side of the fence, you really don't understand how hard it is being in a relationship with somebody with an addiction problem.
Yeah.
Bad enough for the people in it, but
Yeah.
even like being a part of it. And
I definitely relate to that. Like I think I remember being like about a month clean. Exactly that, putting weight on.
yeah, you look fantastic,
Feeling
didn't you?
really well.
Yeah.
And then someone saying to me, you just look better, but you're still a junkie. You're still thinking like a certain way, still acting and behaving a certain way, still walking down the high street looking which shop doors ain't locked, and things like that. And that took a little bit of time to relieve me of that.
Well, there is no mental defence either in it, because again, like you say, you're an 80, 90 mil of meth, probably pocketfuls of Valium or something,
Yeah.
drinking as much as you like, smoking joints, and yet still that doesn't give you a mental defence
Nah.
for that day when you find a bit of silver paper in a bag, your head's gone.
Yeah. And I think, and after that point, I was just battling to get clean for quite a number of years, and always really wanting to do it. I always describe it as, when it comes to the kids, I chop my right arm off, or my left arm, or any arm, but you asked me not to use, and I had no ability to do that.
Yeah, but I mean, and for the people that are in recovery or in addiction, they fully understand that. But people that aren't, that might not make sense to them.
Yeah.
You know, like your dad and that, probably, why don't you just stop? And realising that you really do want to, even on all of them scripts and
Yeah.
other things that you're doing all of that because you don't want to go back to that, even with your children, with your family, trying to build a better life for yourself. But still, something in you just can't do it.
Yeah. And I think when I look at life, once we had the kids, and I think after the third one was born, about 6 months old, maybe even before.
How far apart were they?
The first two are a year and 2 weeks, and then it's 15, and then the younger one's 3 years after.
Did you, and got to ask, because I guess it's interesting, what made you have a second one? Because you must have, the first one it weren't working for you, I guess, was it?
No, I think when my daughter first come along, things weren't too bad. We sort of had it under control a little bit, and I think it was
So what was you doing then? You would still be on your scripts, but you
just
still
on scripts, and I think we'd got down to
still
like
be
lower
to have
dose.
a use every now and then.
Yeah,
Which is a lot of people reason why people, for them that don't know, they like the methadone because you can still use a bit on top, because like Subutex or something, it's a bit of a blocker, so that doesn't work so good.
Yeah, and I mean, when you're on the methadone, you don't have to buy quite so much to get the same effect.
So there was some management harm reduction effect for you.
Yes.
That you could sort of live for a period of time.
Yeah, and I think I was working at this point as well, and it wasn't planned, the second one. And I think my daughter was about 3 months old when she fell pregnant again. And I remember I think I'd just started this new job and getting the phone call, and I was just like, like the money and the work that was going to have to go into doing that. And I think I might have been managing it quite well at that point, because I'd started this job and I think I was just on a methadone script at that point. Like I said, I did have times where I'd just stick to that for a little bit, but it was just never lasted for a long period of time.
Did you think the second child, because now you got a bit of experience, do you think you had the same resolves to try and straighten out more as you did with the first one, or do you think you become more accepting of your situation?
Definitely more accepting, probably through lack of sleep and like milk feeds in the night and what of that stuff. It wasn't really that conscious on my mind at that time. I think by that point I was just trying to plod through and get through the day the best I could. Yeah. As a lot of parents with young kids do.
Yeah. And you both got the same habit roughly?
Yes. Yeah. Both heroin, crack and alcohol. A lot of prescription meds.
So what would it have been like sort of in your house mostly?
At that point, it wasn't too bad, but I mean, within a few months, it was sort of, I'd go to work, I'd try and get a sub off the boss. I'd try and work a little bit harder than everyone else, so I could then say, "Can I have 50 quid tonight?" or say, "I've got to buy something for the kids." There's always some excuse. I was very good at finding reasons why I needed a sub. And then I'd score, go home, we'd have a bit, we'd probably put the kids in the front room in front of the telly, go in the kitchen, thinking because they're in the other room, it will be all right, they won't see us. Kids would come in the room, get a shout at them to go in the other room, so we could do our bits.
Mm.
I think, and that's probably how it started. By the end of that, we're just freely using it in front of them, going in the bathroom and shooting up.
What do you think the atmosphere was like for them?
Absolutely horrendous.
Yeah.
When I look back at it, I mean, I think I had a time when I went home, I think my first home visit out of treatment, and I went to my mum's house because my mum had custody of all 3 kids by this point. And I said, "I'm just going to use the toilet." And when the kids heard that I was going in the toilet, it was all started kicking off and screaming and shouting, "No, don't go in the toilet, Daddy." Because I'd go in the toilet and I wouldn't come out for an hour. And they'd be banging on the door, crying, "Open the door, Dad, what are you doing, what are you doing?" Not knowing why I'm not giving them attention. Where I'm so in there just stuck, sticking needles in myself.
Well, they would have seen that sometimes.
Yeah. Mm. Yeah, they do. I think the younger 2 were probably 2 and 3 by this age. So yeah, they definitely. I know. I'd say I'd turn my shoulder like that and think I'd be able to hide it, but
How did they end up? I mean, obviously, what was the situation that led for the grandparents to take care of them?
I think I was working away a bit and staying away in the week, and it all, like, me and the ex were just always up to no good anyway, and not just, we'd just be lying to each other, both greedy about.
Did you argue a lot?
Argue a lot,
shouting,
yeah.
and
a lot of shouting, a lot of always thinking the other one was having a bit more than each other, trying to hide bits of drugs here and there, and just, I know I was definitely doing a lot of that, thinking that I was getting a bad deal on it.
And the kids weren't getting looked after as good as
the kids weren't getting looked after very well. They always had most stuff. We were quite good thieves, so we provided quite a bit. But like on the emotional side of stuff, neither of us had it about that to give them, really.
With all the drugs and everything you're dealing with, did you know that you were not doing like good by them, or did you have any feelings of guilt, or could you see that then when you're in it like that?
Not really. When I was in it, I wasn't that aware of it. I was very, and I suppose at the time, you know, like they say, one of the defects of blaming others, I was very aware that I would blame her for doing it and not take any responsibility myself.
Mm.
I'm out working or bringing the money in, so I should be able to just be left alone and go and, like, take enough drugs to get me to that point of oblivion. And I think, like what you were saying, we had, she had her family, I had my family, and they helped and held it together for us, like supported us to do a lot of that, to last as long as we did with the kids, to be honest, before they went. And then as the relationship between me and her broke down, she couldn't cope, and she wasn't coping too well, and it got to the point, I suppose, a lot of it was me, like, well, she's got the kids now, I'm free to go and do whatever I want to do, and then her finding it and thinking, well, why is he able to do it and not me? There was so much dysfunction.
But I guess when you're in full-blown addiction, it's not a lot of time for kids, isn't there, looking after them, and
yeah. And I think most of the
battle, it's hard enough without that.
Yeah,
monkey on your back.
yeah, just trying to work out how we're going to get our drugs every day was a big enough battle. And then my mum got them.
So you'd fallen off the scripts and that by then, or you
I
just,
think I was nearly the whole time through my addiction, I was always on a script.
but they weren't holding you.
But I would just go, it was more like a maintenance script. And I'd use on top, and I'd fiddle samples and all of them things that we do.
But your life still become completely unmanageable.
Yes, definitely. And thank goodness my mum got the kids at the time.
Did she just take them, or was it social services, or?
I think my ex handed them over to her. It's hard to remember the exact form of events because I was quite out of it at the time.
Yeah.
But I think she handed them over. That my mum might not have went to social services, so she didn't have to give them back.
So it was like all three kids had gone to your mum's. You split up with your partner, and you're off.
Yeah, and I was I can't even remember where I was living at the time. I was sort of here, there, and everywhere, travelling around, working a bit. Come back in a whirlwind of chaos.
Because they were at your mum's, so you'd just see them when you.
Yeah, I'd
were
sometimes just turn up there. Obviously, being as the way I was, it just getting really excitable, and then leave again with my mum to pick up the pieces. And I think I remember when they went with my mum as well, they're just always clinging to her leg. Like that abandonment stuff was very relevant from like the get-go.
Did you have any like feelings then of sort of guilt or regret or?
Yeah, I did. But a lot of them was overpowered by the drugs.
That's the thing. The drugs themselves can
They just numb
numb
everything.
all of that out. Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember telling myself all the time, I'm going to be more calm around them if I can just take this, this and this. If I get that like chemical balance of mixing this with that and a little bit of this, I'll be able to just sail through the day fairly smoothly.
So then, what kind of got you into recovery? What was the event that?
I'd got, I think I was in the homeless centre in Southend where it got to that point where I just...
Couldn't work no more.
Yeah, and everyone had just had enough of me. Basically just sponging and poncing. And I was in there, and I think I always wanted to be good and do the right, but I just just keep using drugs in there. For the old time I was in the wet house, I think it was only meant to be in there for 3 months, and I think they let me stay in there for 6. And
Wet house means you can drink
and use in there. Well, I don't know if you could drink and use in there, but you could drink and use and still
you
go
can
back
go
there.
back there drunk or
Yeah, and still as long as you was by a certain curfew, and
yeah.
they did have quite a few rules there. But I think I ended up with blood poisoning from injecting and getting quite ill with that and in hospital. And I think it took to that point before a few different of the services got together and said, listen, yeah, we'll offer you a bit of treatment. You can go to a rehab. And I remember at the time that they gave me a list and looking at the pictures, and one had tennis courts. I was like, can I go to that one? But luckily they recommended the one I went to, which was East Coast. And I think I went to Detox first at a place called Greg House in Limehouse, Popular Way. And I'd been there once or twice before and done the same detox. And I just get the same results. But not being able to put... I'd go and do a detox for a week or two, and I'd come out and still try and use just one more, and not realising that where that would end up. I think it was only sort of, I know it talks about it in the big book about sometimes being defogged, and it was only when I got to that point and had the right people around me and the right supporting guys who had been through it, and having that bit of experience shown to me that mate, if you pick up, you're gonna end up in the same situation again.
Yeah.
That really helped.
Well, it's like that. It's that smashing that delusion, isn't it, that we can, like use safely again or control it somehow.
Yeah,
And just one won't hurt sort of idea.
yeah. And I think I'd gone on for probably 16, 17 years with that. Just one more. Next week I'll stop. All of them things. And I suppose that's when I started to get better in there. When I come to treatment up in Lowestoft, and then slowly started building a relationship with my kids, and they were coming up while I was in treatment, visiting every couple of months. And then I moved out of the treatment centre and got a little house just up the road, and they were coming up like once a month. But it got to the point where things were pretty good. Like I had the house, I had a little van, and I remember saying to you, I think I'm not.
How long was that? That was you. How long was you around here for?
I think it was about 3 years.
Yeah, so I mean, you was in treatment for like what, 9 months,
9 months, yeah.
and then the rest of the time sort of involved, but in the community.
Yeah, and that's a good group of people around me.
Yeah,
I'd laid a few roots down, but like I said, my kids were back in Southend, and I remember having a conversation with you, and I think it's about time you go back and be a dad to your kids, because I couldn't but be that guy in their life that they needed. And I think it was about a few days later, I'd literally just packed the van up and was flying back to Southend, and just thinking, I thought, my sister would put me up on her sofa, and would manage to get to hers, and she put me up, and then like within a day or two I'd had found a couple of jobs, and I'd sort of been back to Southend various times for little home week visits here and there, and tried to make some financial amends and do a bit of free work for people where I'd sort of owed amends that needed doing. So there was a few guys there who were willing to give me a bit of work, and I think I'd even got down there in like the first few months, 6 months down there. I don't think I'd done any meetings or anything, but was on the phone, still had quite a good support network up this way. I remember being at work and like just life stress. I was sort of like felt right in it back then. When I got back to Southend, I see a few old mates who lived down the same road, and I was always watching them out scoring and that. And I thought I need to start doing meetings again and get back into that. It's sort of when my sort of social life down there come alive again as well.
yeah.
And I think I've got a flat opposite where the kids lived as well, opposite my mum's house. They let me rent off them, and slowly started building a relationship up with the kids. I mean, it's when I met.
How old were they now?
They were. Oh, they must have been about. The oldest must have been 11 or 12, maybe 12 or 13. And they were coming to stay. And
So what was it like for you? Sort of now you're sort of sober, trying to be a dad again. I mean, how were they? How were they towards you? Did they sort of see you? How did you think they see you as a father?
I think at first they were just really happy to have me there. And then like, they definitely didn't like being told what to do, rules, boundaries, all of that stuff.
So did you sort of have to sort of go in as a friend, or how did you sort of work on?
Not really. I went in probably like a ball in a china shop and just like, this is what's happening. I think there was like a couple of points where my mum had got ill and then the kids were playing up, so I'd just sort of go in there as sort of like a drill sergeant, do this, do that, but I'd see, I mean, especially at the beginning while I was down there, I'd be doing quite a lot of stuff with them and seeing them on a daily basis, and then coming and
you're
staying
making a
over.
massive effort.
Yeah, buying motorbikes to take them motocross, and paddle boards to take them out on the water, and nice things like that. And I suppose it was when lockdown happened, really, that my mum, as they were getting older, the behaviours, they started getting a little bit naughtier, and she's getting older. So it was really good that I was down there making that effort to do that.
Because they're still kids, I guess, that have had a pretty tough start in life, and
Yeah,
they generally don't start
a lot of
necessarily
trauma.
coming out until they get into their teens, does it?
Yeah, so it was the two boys come and live with us first, just as lockdown happened, really. I remember I've been dating.
Because you got a house, I think. You
We was in a flat at this point,
flat, yeah.
and I was been in a relationship with my partner, my now fiance, and I was like, oh, the kids are going to come stay with us. I remember the fear, like the kids are going to come stay with us. Like, how am I going to work? I can't do it on my own. And she was just like, no, don't worry, I'll be it. And she sort of was staying there anyway. We're like, yeah, we'll just make it work. And we just sort of muddled through, winging it, and trying to. I know it's been quite a battle of trying to instill boundaries and restrictions on telephones, computers, time limits to be in, all of them things that.
That's me cockerel in the background
Yeah.
there. Just ignore him.
Yeah, so trying to instill all that stuff, and then obviously there was four of us in a little 2-bed flat, so there weren't no space. But it was, to be honest, I sort of really enjoyed lockdown. At that point, I had the kids back with me, the two boys anyway. Bought a few paddle boards so we could just go out down on the water. We was quite close to the beach as well, so it was nice to get out. And I mean, at that point, you was only, I think, like at the beginning, you was only allowed an hour exercise or some. I can't remember what the exact rules were, but we was out running along the seafront a lot with the boys, just trying to wear them out a little bit, to be honest. But we had some great times. It was ended up being quite a few of us getting together and going out and doing stuff.
Yeah, that's for other people in recovery and that, 'cause I think you sort of started to get a bit more active in there, didn't you? With the
Yeah, and
getting
sort of
people out and about and doing stuff. And
meeting up with a few friends, and there's about 6, 7 of us who were like on a Friday night when the restrictions lifted a little bit. We'd all go down there, take the kids down there, and go out on the paddle boards for a bit, get back, and then have a little barbecue in the car park. It was like, yeah, it was really nice, a really nice time, and built up some really good friendships there as well. And slowly got to the point. It was like, I need a bigger property. And then I think we probably had a few conversations about saving. Because I was earning pretty well, but I was really bad at saving any money and just wasting it. And slowly started saving and whatnot. And then me and the missus, she had a bit of savings, and we put it together, and then went through that process of buying a property and doing it up.
oh, sorry about that. Just had to have a little break and go and shut their cockerel up and give him some corn, keep him happy. Anyway, sorry about that, mate. So you were just saying about you getting together to get a house. I think we was there, was we?
Yes, yeah. I'm glad you remembered. I'd forgotten where I was at. Yeah, so we got together and we got a deposit together, and then bought this old house that needed a lot of work to it, which was it was nice because it's quite near where the boys were going to school. I remember one day coming, like we was there sort of demolishing the kitchen, and one of my boys come past with all his mates, and they was all like, "Oh, can we come in and help?" And I was just like, had a line of school kids, and I was just handing out gloves and hard hats and sledgehammers, and they loved it, just smashing the kitchen up. And there's quite a few guys in the fellowship helped me out with that as well, which was really nice.
Yeah.
Got together, do a bit of work for an hour or two, and then sit down and talk a bit of recovery and go through the book a bit maybe, and things like that. And yeah, I remember getting feeling like it was never going to happen, like it was just taking so long to...
Takes forever, doesn't it?
Yeah, and like having hold-ups with kitchens and worktops and all of them sort of things. But it was so nice when we got it, and like everything was done nice. And I remember having that moment of like, I'd realised all three of the kids hadn't lived with me for 10 years, and then coming down and having them all at a breakfast bar that I'd built.
Yeah. How long did that take to get to that point in recovery?
I think that was about 5 or 6 years.
And a lot of work.
Yeah, a lot of work. Yeah, and it was nice. I mean, but it's life, isn't it? Like
Yeah.
an hour later of having that moment of like, wow, the kids are back and they're just sitting there eating breakfast and they're kicking footballs at the windows and all that peace and nice stuff had gone again.
And they start dismantling it again.
Yeah, and it's like I suppose it's been a big sort of learning curve about life really, and relationships with myself and the kids and the missus and all of that stuff. And
Because I guess that you dreamt about that. I mean, that's kind of what you was always trying to achieve. But I guess through sort of addiction, it never allowed you to give you the chance to do that. And then recovery's kind of give you the chance back. So that was the dream. And that's what I found myself, that you get a moment like that where you feel like I'm actually living in the dream. But obviously in the dream it's perfect with no problems, which is not really a reality. But it's nice to make it to that point, and it sort of makes it all worthwhile anyway.
yeah, and I think it's been really, really good for
It's
the
not
kids.
easy recovery, is it?
No.
Life's not easy, but certainly it's not easy, especially the abstinence recovery, which you ended up choosing. That's not an easy path to go down either. It just seems like it's more sustainable for some people.
Yeah. Well, I know if I hadn't gone down that path, I definitely wouldn't be sat here doing what I'm doing now.
What do you think the alternative would be if you'd have stayed on the...
I think it probably...
Even if you did manage to keep it balanced out?
I think it probably was just heading to jail, really. Jail or a psych ward.
Yeah.
I'd had times where I've been that section and whatnot, and as soon as that, and I think a lot of that is the heavy crack use, and then the sleep deprivation mixed together just sends you a bit doolally. Or it sent me a little bit doolally.
So I guess even on the script, it's still binging, isn't it? It's just become a binger rather than a daily
Yeah.
sort of user. But that's just as dangerous, I think. I think binge, like you even get it with the binge drinkers, where they don't drink, then they have a binge, and then they stop again, and then they binge. I think it's a very dangerous way of doing it. I mean, it's doing it every day is dangerous, but I think binging's...
Yeah, because I think I had the everyday use, but like a few days through the week, my use would be really low, so I'd have just enough not to get ill, and then through while that was going on, I sort of function a little bit enough to go and make some money somehow, and then get a bit of money, and then I'd have 2 or 3 days where I'd hit it really hard.
So I mean that can cause overdose, I think, as well, can't it?
Yeah. Yeah, I think I had quite a few times where partners and friends overdosed in front of us.
Yeah.
And then you like ring the ambulances up and all of that chaos. Lucky none of them ever actually died in front of me at that point.
Yeah.
I've had quite a few mates die from overdose, so just not why I've been there. But I always remember having that really twisted perception of, if someone's overdosed, the gear must have been really good. I want some of that stuff.
Yeah, it's hard for people to believe that's a fact, but it is, isn't it?
Yeah.
Or even people to get brought round from overdose with trying to think of the name, I can't think enough.
The Narcan.
Yeah, they wake up angry.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable, but it's a drug addiction, isn't it?
Yeah, and I don't really remember overdosing to the fact that I needed an ambulance called.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure my mum had said she'd found me passed out with needles hanging out my arms and that. And even her just waking me up, I had the hump.
Yeah. So how long have you been in recovery now?
It'll be 8 years in July.
And so where are you at now?
Today, it's all right. It's very stressful. Very stressful at the minute.
Because of kids?
Because of kids, yeah. And then trying to run a business. I've got my own business that I've set up that's doing quite well. And trying to work and provide.
Getting married?
Getting married. Holidays, like life's, when I look at the big picture of it, it's actually, I'm really blessed with that. I've got quite a lot going for us and worked hard enough and suffered a bit early. I always remember being told that, like, I think it was yourself who said it, but it's like the bow and arrow. The further you go back into the pain, when you release, you fly further into the freedom. And I think I've sort of disciplined myself, especially with work stuff, in that, like, work really hard and save, and then later on you start to reap the rewards. I'm probably a bit of a workaholic at times and probably do quite a few, at least once or twice a week, work a few too many hours. But it's been quite successful in doing that, and it's given us the ability, it's given me the ability to now be able to pay for weddings and take the kids on holiday in a couple of months, and nice things like that.
But I guess, and again, say as much a little about this as you can, because I know that it's sort of current, a lot of it. But I think that it's difficult, I notice, for people like yourself that get in recovery. And, like I say, life's hard for everybody, especially at the minute, all that's been going on in the world, and there's a lot of not good things happening on lots of different levels for a lot of people. But I think people can not always realise that your children were brought up in a very dysfunctional, unhealthy environment, and even though they had your mum to take care of them, it's still a real broken home. And then when it comes back to now, that stuff starts coming out of them again. And then it makes it difficult, even more difficult.
Yeah, and I think like they all got, when they was under my mum's care and it went to court and all of that, so she's like got parental responsibility.
Do you
whatnot.
think? Sorry, butting, mate. I'm just thinking. Do you think people actually realise that? What's the chances of them children growing up without some sort of emotional problems? I don't think that's really taken into account, is it? That
Yeah, and I think each of them will have that in different.
But again, is anything like you to think just because of that?
Yeah.
Whether they're showing any signs or not, that they'd have some sort of therapy or something to say, look, the chances are you're going to have some difficulties because of your early life. That you think that as a society we'd kind of say, look, you just can't just wait and see what's going to happen. There's stuff you can do to maybe alleviate some of that distress, rather than wait until they get to teen years where they start going down them paths themselves.
Well, I know when they had a bit of help, when they were got a bit of funding for counselling at school and whatnot.
That did happen, did it?
Yeah.
Because of behaviour problems, or just?
I think because of their being under social services and whatnot.
Oh.
So they got a bit of I think each school gets a certain amount of funding for each child. So they did get a bit of counselling. But the only results I really remember hearing, or the only results that I can remember from that time, I can't remember if I was using at that time. I think I was still in active addiction at this point when I was getting that, was that as soon as myself or their mum was mentioned, they'd completely shut down, and they'd go and start throwing stuff at windows and things like that, and couldn't emotionally comprehend what was going on and why it had gone on, and them sorts of things, which I think is probably quite a normal response for a child whose brain isn't developed yet.
Yeah.
And like you're saying, I'm slowly seeing it coming out in a couple of them now in different form, different in each of them, really.
Yeah. Well, and again, I think you kind of also exposed them to a better environment in their more recent years, which can really be a big help.
Yeah, and I think at the minute I'm starting to take one of them to work with me. He's not doing too well in the school system. He's very, very savvy and very smart, but he's not very academic in that way of wanting to sit in classrooms and whatnot.
No.
So I think I'm quite lucky that I work out on building sites and I can take him with me if need be. But the process of trying to discipline him, I suppose, would be the word, and put the boundaries in. They get to a certain age where that sort of is really tough
I think
to
if
do.
they haven't had all that in their
Yeah.
life, it seems that for people, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
But it must be nice that you've had an opportunity to sort of build a bit of a relationship with him over the last 8 years.
Yeah, it's been really nice, and we've had some really good times together. And it's like, what's to say, the recovery saying you just get a better class of problems.
And again, I don't have to answer, but I'm just thinking as well, how's the mum doing these days?
I haven't actually seen or heard from her in a little while. I think I heard, I don't know, maybe 6 months ago, but it was she said she was doing better.
So they don't see her then?
No, they don't. They haven't seen her in a few years now. I think they might have spoke to her like, at Christmas time, maybe a year and a half ago. Not this Christmas, just gone. Maybe the one before. I think they spoke to her.
So they still got addiction really affecting their lives as well, haven't they? 'Cause
Yeah.
their mum was their
And then it's
relationship.
the broken promises, I suppose, and I can hear it in her like saying, "Oh, I'll get me money on this day. I'm going to send you presents and etc. etc. I'm going to come and
Good
see
intention.
you soon." And probably believes it and means it
Yeah,
with all
no,
her
no.
heart when she's saying it.
Any people addicted to drugs out there, you should be banned from good intentions.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because then it's just let them down again.
Yeah.
And now, like, I'm not sure if they want to talk to her or not.
No, that makes it worse, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Better off not promising anything.
yeah. And I've like tried to get her into meetings and that sort of stuff, and explained a bit about what I've done and what I've had to do to get to where I am, and that there is another way out, I suppose.
Yeah.
There's certain things you have to do and sacrifice to get to that point, and certain suggestions you have to take, I suppose, would be the word, I suppose.
Yeah, like we said, it's not an easy journey, but it's possible, and I think
Yeah,
if you're willing or able to make the effort and put the work in and do what's necessary.
yeah. And I think from what I gather, there's so much, so many like antipsychotics and strong medications, and I doubt half of it really goes in what I'm even saying sometimes.
Yeah, don't get me started on that one.
Yeah.
It's really, again, like I was saying about methadone, it sort of blocks you off, doesn't it? It's
Yeah,
some of them natural motivators that you need of feeling a bit guilty and a bit shameful, that kind of even gets knocked out.
you're just numb to it, and you don't
Yeah,
even,
or even like having
realise,
your dreams.
didn't even understand any of it. And I think that was very, I really become aware of that when I stopped taking it and went through the detox process. But then suddenly, like, when I heard what these people were saying, but I'd heard probably the same stuff for a little bit of time, none of it made sense before. But then once like, I'd got that substance out of my body, it all started making a little bit of sense.
Yeah, well, I don't know whether people really consider that, I think from what I've observed over the years, from my own experience and working with a lot of other people, is certain drugs really block your capacity to have a consciousness at a level that you kind of need
Yeah,
to overcome addiction. And so if that's being numbed out by the drugs, you're kind of stuck.
yeah,
Because as long as you're taking them drugs, you're sort of stuck there. Because you're not going to have the mental capacity to decide to make better choices. And I think that's sometimes where rehab really comes into its own in the longer term, which again, most people ain't getting anymore.
yeah,
Because it just gives you a chance to clear your head, to give you the capacity to make them decisions,
Definitely.
which is why we sort of use the term powerless. And that you're powerless to make the right choice. So keeping people on even some of them medications is like they're being consigned to a life of addiction because while they're on them drugs, they're never going to have the capacity to not be on them drugs.
yeah,
It sounds like an obvious thing to say, but I honestly don't think a lot of people understand that. It's like, so you can see it with certain medications. It's like dumbed down so much that how are they ever going to make a decision to not be a drug addict?
Yeah.
It's just not going to happen
No.
while they're on that medication. And I know that people that are anti-abstinent really don't like that because, but it's true. I think it's absolutely true. I think there needs to be more research in it, and again, it would even be nice that there'd be a bit more research on what medications are safe.
Yeah, definitely.
For people with addiction to take, because mind-altering drugs, whether they're bought from a dealer or given by a doctor, they're mind-altering, which means your mind's altered. That's not who you are, and that's the danger of it. That you need your mind because and you need that desire to want to overcome and get on, as you know, innit? How many times do you think in the last 8 years you thought, this is too much?
Yeah.
I can't do this. It's like, I can't do this. This life is too much. You can see why a lot of people opt for staying away from everybody, getting a little flat somewhere, and because their brains are not functioning properly, and it takes a bit of time to redevelop it. And I think, like you rightly said, being around a group of good people and being part of that group of good people, that you're part of someone else's group.
Yeah.
But that really is a big part of the recipe for success, in it, being around people that are there to support you.
Yeah, and I think people all heading for the same,
Yeah.
wanting the same outcome, don't want to go back to that old lifestyle. And having there was a group of us lads who went on a few holidays together and all supported each other through that. If anyone was going, sometimes we get be out by the swimming pool and get out and start reading the big book and nice things like that.
Yeah.
Some adventures on quad bikes and all stuff that I would have liked to have done through my 20s,
Yeah.
but couldn't get to do because of addiction.
Yeah.
I was quite lucky that there was some other lads going through the same sort of stuff, and we got out and done that.
Yeah, because it's not just living your life, it's doing your recovery in it. And I think when your recovery's got some value, because it's hard fought for and hard earned,
Yeah.
it means something. And then I think when the times are tough, you don't just go on and giving it up easy.
Yeah, definitely.
It's too valuable, because I know that it's the glue that holds my life together. I always like to do this thing when I got a whiteboard to say, look, I do like a tower, and at the bottom I'll do a little slice and say 2%, and 98% is the top bit. The 2% is your recovery, and the 98% rests on the 2%. And I think, unfortunately, I think some people can spend 98% of their time on the 2%, which ain't good.
Yeah.
And then only 2% on the 98%. But even though recovery is only a small part of your life, it's very important, because the rest of your life depends on it. And I think once you get that value to doing recovery and the things you have to do to maintain it, then I think you can get to enjoy, but also deal with the other 98%. Because like you rightly said, is the fantasies, it's all great, but the reality is it's pretty tough.
Yeah, it's hard work.
A lot of it.
And sometimes just dealing with other people and
Yeah.
kids and family members and all that is it's really difficult. Trying to do it from a calm.
But if you didn't have the nice house, the job, the missus, the holidays, I think it's the good stuff that really helps make it worthwhile with the difficult stuff. I think if people lose the good stuff, which I do see, where they've just got a lot of hard stuff, they're in recovery, their brain's still not firing, right? They've not found a good group of people to get involved with.
Yeah.
And they're kind of stuck in a very difficult experience. It's easy to give in when you're like that.
Yeah.
You've got to have good stuff. You've got to have some good stuff in recovery to make it work.
Yeah. And I think, like you were saying about working hard for that good stuff, it's been a battle to get a lot of it.
Yeah.
And then trying to the other thing is being content with it. not looking at next door's house that's a little bit bigger, or just had a loft conversion and things like that. And I think getting to that, I'm at that point where, okay, there's a few more bits I want to do, but I've got a time scale in which to do them, and slowly putting the steps into doing it.
Yeah.
Bit by bit, I suppose, and not rushing it all, not expecting too much at once.
No.
I think that's been very relevant in my life, in that, especially with like waiting for the family to recover, and like family members to start forgiving me straight away just because I look a bit better. I've been washing and got some clean clothes on and that. Sometimes some of that stuff's taking like 3, 4, 5 years.
And I think they start seeing that you're kind of giving a bit, you're contributing something instead of pouncing off them all the time.
Yeah.
I think that really helps,
it
doesn't
does
it?
help.
When you're the one giving them stuff rather than keep taking it all the time. I think that's a good little tip in recovery, that you're giving back. I think that's like step 9, isn't it? That you make amends, you start, well, I call it creative amends, where you sort of realise what you're taking from them. Even the kids, you know, how many Christmases did they, you know, weren't that great? How many holidays did they miss? How many days out? How many times was there no one there telling them that they loved them, or they're valuable, or you're important to me, or even showing that, you know, by turning up and, you know, doing all that good stuff. If you make a list of what they lost, that trying to put all of that back, not out of guilt, but just because it's like, if you took something, you need to give it back. And sometimes you have to give a little bit more because there's a big hole. And I think that becomes kind of the fun part of recovery as well, doesn't it? That you're like, you know, giving back what you took from them and some, not taking them on the nice holidays and, you know, having the nice days out and experiences.
And I think where I'm quite active as well, and especially with the boys, it's quite easy to do and quite enjoyable to go and do some adventurous sports and nice things like that.
Yeah.
I think I've got my stag do coming up soon in Newquay, and both the boys are coming.
You go surfing and that.
Surfing, cliff jumping.
Oh, that's the bouldering, that's great.
Yeah, some of that stuff. I think we've got combat archery, doing some of that as well.
Yeah.
So I think
sea kayaking's pretty good and all.
Yeah, I think we've got that booked as well. We've got quite a few different activities booked that I know they're going to love. I know I'm going to love it as well.
Yeah, it's just having some life.
Yeah.
All right, mate, and I think that sort of brings us to the end, but appreciate you coming down, mate. Thank you very much for sharing. I'm sure there's a lot more in there, a lot more questions. I know it's pretty delicate stuff, but thanks anyway, mate. Appreciate it.
Thanks
God
for
bless
asking.
and good luck with your wedding.
Thanks, Lester.
Thank you.